Marvelous Marvin Hagler is a name synonymous with destruction and dominance. His almost 7-year rule over the middleweight division alone would earn him the moniker of a legend. But what truly made him marvelous was his place in the almost mythical Fabulous Four. Join me in my retelling of an icon, Marvin Hagler, the Marvelous One. Marvin Hagler, according to BoxRec, had an amateur record of 54 fights with 52 wins and 2 losses. Incredibly, 43 of those wins would be by knockout. However, his amateur win tally might be as high as 57 according to other sources. Hagler would again, according to BoxRec, begin his professional career on the 18th of May 1973 against another debutant called Terry Ryan. This fight would be held in the Brockton High School Gymnasium, where Hagler would win by knockout. After this debut win, Hagler would continue on fighting relative unknowns until a year and 3 months after his debut. He would put his undefeated record on the line against Sugar Ray Seales. Seales at the time was undefeated, having 21 fights, winning on all occasions. But Seales had an extensive amateur career, having a record of 350 fights, 338 wins and 12 losses, including an Olympic gold medal. In this first fight with Seales, Hagler would win by unanimous decision. Crazy enough, after this fight, beating an undefeated professional who was also an Olympic gold medalist, Hagler's next 2 fights would take place back at Brockton High School's gym. After winning both those 2 fights by stoppage, a rematch with Sugar Ray Seales was on the cards. This time, however, the decision would not go Hagler's way. The fight would go to decision, resulting in a majority draw. Hagler then would continue to ascend the pro ranks, knocking out most of the foes he came up against, until he fought a man named Bobby Watts on the 13th of January 1976. Hagler, who was unable to dispatch of Watts, would have to leave the decision to the judges, where Watts would get the decision. However, the promoter of the event apparently went over to Hagler's entourage to apologise for the decision. According to FightCity.com, the promoter would later say that it might not have been the worst decision of all time, but it was pretty bad. Hagler, not one to be discouraged, would win his next fight by TKO before facing Willie Monroe. Monroe would put on a show of a lifetime. According to Philadelphia promoter Peltz, he would say every round was a war, but Willie won 7 of them. Monroe would defeat Hagler by unanimous decision, but this would not be the last time they would meet. 10 months later at the Heinz Convention Center in Boston, Hagler would get his rematch with Monroe. This time, Hagler wouldn't leave it to the judges. Hagler would stop Monroe within the distance, winning by technical knockout. Now the score was 1-1, and the deciding fight would occur on the 23rd of August 1977 at the Spectrum in Philadelphia. Once again, Hagler's destructive power was on show, beating Monroe by TKO for the second and last time. Hagler had now morphed into the indomitable monster we all know and love. For 2 years, Hagler would fight, demanding a title shot, destroying all in his way, including a TKO win over Sugar Ray Seales in their trilogy fight. Hagler would finally get his long-awaited and well-deserved title shot against Vito Antuofermo on the 30th of November 1979. Hagler, who would dominate the fight, looked to have finally won the title, until once again Hagler was robbed of a victory. The judge scored it a split decision draw, causing Antuofermo to retain the title. Hagler had felt wronged and hurt by the decision, but it did not stop him, leading to a rematch with the first man to beat him, Bobby Watts. Hagler, with no remorse for Watts, utterly annihilated him in 2 rounds, meaning that Hagler had avenged both losses on his record. A win against Marcos Geraldo a month later would put Hagler back into title contention against Alan Minter. Minter, who was fighting on his home British soil, would put on a courageous performance, but nothing was stopping Marvelous Marvin Hagler that night. Hagler, who knew he could not leave it to the scorecards, obliterated Minter to win both the WBC and WBA world titles. Hagler's celebrations would end before they started. The angry English crowd started hurling bottles and beer cans into the ring. This had forced Hagler to leave the ring in a hurry before he had received his belts. Once again, feeling like the world was against him, Hagler decided he would have to prove himself to the world, winning his first 7 title defenses by stoppage, including a dominant rematch win over Vito Antuofermo. He would then participate in his legendary bout against one of the greatest fighters who have ever lived and the first member of the Fabulous Four he would face, the Hands of Stone, Roberto Duran. Duran, who was already a 3-weight world champion and had victories over the likes of Esteban de Jesus, Pepino Cuevas, Ken Buchanan, Sugar Ray Leonard and Davey Moore, was Hagler's toughest challenge yet. The fight was a close and competitive affair, with both fighters getting their fair share of the action. Hagler found it very tough to break down the Panamanian icon, but did enough to earn himself a unanimous decision win. Following this win over one of the greatest fighters in history, Hagler would face Juan Domingo Roldan and Mustafa Hamsho, beating both of them by TKO. His next fight, however, was one of the greatest fights in the history of boxing, coined The War. This fight was truly his career-defining fight against the hitman, Thomas Hearns. The bout was a sight to behold, 2 knockout artists running immediately out of the gates trying to knock each other's heads off. Hearns threw everything but the kitchen sink at Hagler, even breaking his dynamite right hand on Hagler's forehead during the first round. After 3 rounds of intense fighting, Hearns had absolutely no legs left due to the heavy hands of Hagler and from punching himself out. He was almost running away from Hagler, who chased him down and finished the fight. The fight was over and the Marvelous One had retained his title and defeated all but one man in the Fabulous Four, Sugar Ray Leonard. For people who don't know who the Fabulous Four are, or the Four Kings, they are Marvin Hagler, Roberto Duran, Sugar Ray Leonard and Thomas Hearns, four of the greatest fighters ever who all fought each other in legendary bouts. It is also important to note Hagler had wanted a fight with Ray Leonard for a long time. Leonard had always told Hagler it would happen and even called a conference inviting Hagler, where it was thought he was going to announce his intention to fight his middleweight colleague. However, in a sick twist of irony, Leonard announced his retirement, much to Hagler's dismay. Following this shock retirement, Hagler and Leonard would become friends to the point where Hagler would continue to confide in Leonard about not feeling as good as he once was and his own potential retirement. But Hagler would not retire and instead fight an absolute barn burner with undefeated John Mugabi. Mugabi gave a strong showing, almost closing Hagler's eye, but Hagler would again come out on top with a 10th round knockout. Both men would be hospitalized and urinating blood after this bout. Leonard, who was in attendance for this fight, saw that Hagler was not the same dominant force he once was, and he announced that he was going to come out of retirement to face Hagler. Hagler, who felt betrayed by Leonard, agreed, as he wanted to destroy the darling of boxing once and for all. He finally got his chance on the 6th of April 1987. Leonard Hagler was the showdown the whole boxing world wanted. Two men who were exact opposites. Leonard, who was adored by the public, an Olympic gold medalist, multiple weight world champion and full of flair. And Hagler, unappreciated, no proper amateur pedigree, a powerful fighter who ruled a single division with an iron fist. The drastic differences in their character and fighting styles were clearly apparent during their careers and their fight, with Hagler stalking, throwing bombs at the evasive, fast Leonard. Leonard, who again, unlike the brutally honest Hagler, was a trickster. He developed a plan during the fight. He would run for the majority of the round until the last 30 seconds, in which he would unload fast and flashy combos on Hagler to impress the judges. The fight would go to a decision today where many still have their arguments. Would it go to Leonard or Hagler? Speed or power? Trickery or honesty? The fight would end in a split decision win for Sugar Ray Leonard. This would be Hagler's last ever fight, retiring after what he believed was another decision that undermined what he truly deserved. I'm not going to say my opinion on who I think won, as it creates such great divisiveness, but my personal belief on the reason opinions are so split to this day is that this fight highlights your judging style and what you look for in fighters. If you think Leonard won, I believe you're more likely to enjoy flashy, fast and technically skilled fighters like Pernell Whitaker or Roy Jones. While if you think Hagler won, I'd assume you'd like more tough, strong, hard-hitting, monster-esque fighters like Julio Cesar Chavez or Golovkin. It's definitely not mutually exclusive. You can love fighters on either side of the spectrum, but I do think it highlights your personal ideology of how to judge and score fights. That's how close this fight was. A legendary career ended with disappointment, and one of the greatest middleweights ever would walk out of the ring and never back in. A man dodged by everyone but kept knocking until the establishment had no other choice but to give him a shot. A true legend and a boxing icon, and one us fans should forever appreciate. I hope you enjoyed my biography / documentary-esque video on Marvelous Marvin Hagler. I got similar videos on Willie Pep, Marcel Sedan and Rocky Marciano that you should check out if you like this one. If you did enjoy it, don't forget to subscribe and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.